When I was young, I had a deep passion for exploring abandoned places. The mystery of old, empty buildings always called to me. The idea that these places once buzzed with life but now stood silent fascinated me. I loved the thrill of stepping into the past, seeing the decay of what was once new, and feeling the history that lingered in the air. A few years ago, my friends and I decided to explore an abandoned academy in our town of Cedarville. The building had been empty since 1998, and many stories surrounded it. People said it was haunted, and we wanted to see for ourselves if it was true. It was a night perfect for our adventure. We met up at my house and packed flashlights, snacks, and our phones. There were 4 of us: me, Jake, Emily, and Mia. We were all excited and a little scared as we walked to the academy. We talked about the stories we had heard. Some people said they heard strange noises inside. Others claimed to see shadows moving in the windows at night. When we reached the academy, it looked even creepier than we imagined. The windows were broken, and the doors were boarded up. Vines had grown over the walls, and the paint was peeling off. The place looked like it belonged in a horror movie. We found a way in through a broken window at the back of the building. One by one, we climbed through, trying to be as quiet as possible. Once inside, we turned on our flashlights. The beams cut through the darkness, revealing dusty hallways and old lockers. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. We decided to stick together, not wanting to get lost in the maze of corridors. As we walked, our footsteps echoed loudly. Every sound seemed amplified in the empty building. The silence was heavy, almost oppressive. We started in the main hallway where the principal's office was. The door was ajar, and we pushed it open slowly. Inside, the room was a mess. Papers were scattered everywhere, and the desk was overturned. It looked like someone had left in a hurry. I shivered, thinking about what could have caused such chaos. Next, we moved to the classrooms. Each one was filled with old desks and chairs, some broken and others covered in dust. Books were left open on the desks, their pages yellowed with age. It felt like the students had just left and never returned. In one classroom, we found a chalkboard with strange writing on it. The words were smeared and hard to read, but it looked like some kind of warning. Jake, always the brave one, laughed it off and said it was probably just kids playing a prank. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling it gave me. As we continued exploring, we heard a loud bang from somewhere in the building. We all froze, our hearts pounding. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered. We nodded, our eyes wide with fear. We decided to investigate, even though every instinct told me to leave. We followed the sound down a long, dark hallway. The walls were lined with old photos of students and teachers, their faces smiling and happy. It felt eerie, like they were watching us. At the end of the hallway, we reached the gymnasium. The doors were closed, but we could hear strange noises coming from inside. With a deep breath, Jake pushed the doors open. The gym was huge, and our flashlights barely lit up the far corners. We stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath our feet. In the middle of the gym, we saw something that made our blood run cold. A figure stood there, dressed in old, tattered clothes. It was facing away from us, but we could see its shoulders rising and falling as if it were breathing heavily. We stood frozen, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, the figure turned around, and we saw its face. It was pale and gaunt, with dark, sunken eyes. It looked right at us and let out a chilling scream. We ran. I don't remember how we got out of the gym or the building. All I remember is the pure terror that drove us to flee. We didn't stop running until we were far away from the academy, panting and out of breath. We never went back to that academy. The experience haunted us for a long time. We couldn't explain what we saw that night, and we didn't want to try. Our passion for exploring abandoned places was gone, replaced by the fear of what we might find. That night taught us that some places are better left alone. The abandoned academy still stands, a silent reminder of the horrors that can lurk in the dark. And I, for one, am happy to leave it that way. As we walked through the academy, we came across an old, rusty door that seemed different from the others. The door was slightly ajar, and a faint light flickered from within. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to investigate. Inside, we found a small room filled with old photographs, documents, and personal belongings. The photos depicted students and teachers, but something was off. The faces in the photographs seemed distorted, almost ghostly. Emily picked up an old diary from the table and started reading it aloud. The diary belonged to a student who had attended the academy decades ago. The entries spoke of strange occurrences, eerie noises, and sightings of ghostly figures. As we delved deeper into the diary, the entries became more frantic and desperate. The student wrote about a shadowy figure that seemed to follow them everywhere. They described the feeling of being watched, of cold hands brushing against their skin, and of whispers in the darkness. The last entry was scribbled hastily, almost unreadable, and simply said, "I can't escape it." We decided to explore the rest of the academy, hoping to find more clues about the haunting. In one of the classrooms, we found a desk that stood out from the others. It was covered in strange symbols and markings. Jake, being the curious one, sat at the desk and started examining the carvings. As soon as he touched the desk, a sudden chill filled the room. The temperature dropped, and we could see our breath in the air. The lights flickered, and we heard the faint sound of children laughing. The laughter grew louder and more sinister, echoing through the room. We huddled together, our flashlights shaking in our hands. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and we were plunged into darkness. Panic set in as we fumbled to find the door handle. Just as we were about to give up, the door creaked open on its own, and the laughter stopped. We ran out of the classroom, our hearts pounding in our chests. Determined to uncover the truth, we continued our exploration. We came across a hallway that seemed different from the others. The air was heavy, and the walls were covered in strange, shadowy figures. It felt as if the hallway was alive, pulsating with a dark energy. We ventured down the hallway, our footsteps echoing in the silence. As we reached the end, we found a large, ornate door with intricate carvings. The door was locked, but Mia noticed a small keyhole. She pulled out a key she had found earlier in the principal's office and inserted it into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a hidden chamber. The room was filled with ancient artifacts, dusty tomes, and more photographs. At the center of the room was a large, circular table with a map of the academy. The map had markings and notes, indicating various locations within the building. As we examined the map, we realized that it pointed to a specific location within the academy, the basement. We had heard stories about the basement being the most haunted part of the building, but we had avoided it until now. With a sense of dread, we decided to follow the map's instructions. We found the entrance to the basement, a rickety staircase that led down into the darkness. The air grew colder with each step, and the smell of decay became stronger. As we reached the bottom, we saw a large, iron door with chains and locks. With a deep breath, we unlocked the door and stepped inside. The basement was vast, filled with old furniture, broken machinery, and strange symbols painted on the walls. In the center of the room, we saw the figure from the gymnasium, standing motionless. The figure slowly turned to face us, its eyes filled with an otherworldly light. It raised its hand and pointed at us, and we felt a wave of cold wash over us. The lights flickered, and the room seemed to close in on us. We realized that this was the source of the haunting, the entity that had terrorized the academy for decades. In a moment of bravery, Jake stepped forward and demanded to know why the figure was haunting the academy. The figure's eyes locked onto Jake, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, it spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It told us of a tragic event that had occurred long ago, a fire that had claimed the lives of many students and teachers. I was working the graveyard shift at the gas station in Pineville. The night was quiet, and I was halfway through my shift. The store was empty except for the hum of the refrigerators and the soft buzz of the overhead lights. I was stocking some shelves when I heard the chime of the door. A woman entered, holding a young boy's hand. They both looked terrified. The woman's clothes were torn, and her face was streaked with tears. The boy clung to her side, his eyes wide with fear. She approached the counter, her voice shaky. "Can I use your phone?" she asked. I nodded and handed her the store phone. As she dialed, I noticed her hands trembling. The boy stayed close to her, looking around nervously. I couldn't imagine what they had been through. The woman spoke softly into the phone, her words rushed and urgent. I tried not to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help catching fragments of her conversation. She was trying to reach someone for help. After the call, she asked if they could stay in the store for a while. I could see she was desperate. Of course, I said. You can stay as long as you need. I offered them some free drinks and snacks. The woman's face softened a bit, and she thanked me. They sat in a corner, the boy munching on a candy bar while the woman sipped a bottle of water. I kept an eye on them, making sure they felt safe. The night dragged on, and the unease in my stomach grew. I didn't know what had happened to them, but it was clear they were running from something or someone. An hour passed. The door chimed again, this time more aggressively. A man stormed in, his face twisted with anger. "There you are," he shouted, making a beeline for the woman and the boy. The woman shrank back, pulling the boy closer. "Sir, you need to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I stepped between him and the woman. "Get out of my way," he roared. "She's coming with me." He tried to push past me, but I held my ground. The woman was crying now, clutching her son protectively. "Sir, I'm calling the police," I warned. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the phone. The man's eyes flashed with rage, and he lunged at me, knocking the phone out of my hand. It clattered to the floor, but I managed to grab it and dial 911. "Help! We need police at the gas station on Maple Street," I shouted into the phone. The dispatcher assured me that help was on the way, but it felt like an eternity before I heard the sirens. The man continued to shout, trying to drag the woman out of the store. I stood in his way, hoping to buy time. The boy was crying now, his face buried in his mother's side. Finally, the police arrived. 2 officers burst through the door, guns drawn. "Step away from them," one officer commanded. The man hesitated, then raised his hands, his face still contorted with anger. The officers moved quickly, handcuffing him and escorting him out to the squad car. The woman collapsed onto a chair, sobbing with relief. The boy held on to her, still frightened but visibly relieved that the man was gone. One of the officers stayed behind to talk to the woman. She explained that the man was her boyfriend and had been abusive. She had finally managed to escape with her son, seeking refuge in the gas station. The officer assured her that she was safe now and that they would help her find a place to stay. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The situation had been terrifying, but I was glad I could help. The woman thanked me repeatedly, tears of gratitude in her eyes. I told her it was no problem, just glad she and her son were safe. The police took the man away, and the officer stayed with the woman until a social worker arrived. They arranged for her and her son to stay at a safe house for the night. As they left, the woman turned to me one last time. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. I nodded, watching as they walked out into the night, finally safe from harm. The store was quiet again. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerators and the buzz of the lights, but the night felt different now. I had faced something terrifying and helped someone in need. The graveyard shift had never felt so important. As the hours passed and the morning light began to filter through the windows, I couldn't stop thinking about the woman and her son. I hoped they would find peace and safety in their new life, and I hoped that in some small way, I had made a difference. The memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the strength it takes to stand up to fear and the power of kindness in the face of darkness. The shift started like any other, with the routine tasks that occupied my time. Little did I know, this night would be anything but ordinary. The woman and her son were the first unexpected visitors of the night. Their presence brought a sense of urgency and fear that I had never encountered before. As I handed her the phone, I couldn't help but notice the desperation in her eyes. She spoke quickly, almost in a whisper, as if afraid of being overheard. The boy, no more than 6 or 7, clung to her like a lifeline. His wide, fearful eyes scanned the room, and I wondered what could have caused such terror in someone so young. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as we waited. The woman and her son sat in the corner, their eyes darting towards the door at every sound. The tension in the air was palpable. I tried to offer them comfort, bringing over some snacks and drinks, but their fear overshadowed everything else. Every time the door chimed, my heart skipped a beat. We were on edge, anticipating something or someone that would shatter the fragile sense of safety we were trying to maintain. And then, the door chimed again, and he walked in. The man's entrance was like a storm breaking. His anger filled the room, and the atmosphere changed instantly. He marched towards the woman and the boy, his intent clear. I stepped in front of him, my heart pounding, but determined to protect them. "Get out of my way," he bellowed, his voice echoing in the small store. "She's coming with me." I stood my ground, refusing to let him take another step towards them. The fear in the woman's eyes drove me to act, to be the barrier between them and this enraged man. As the confrontation escalated, I knew I had to get help. My hands shook as I dialed 911, my voice wavering as I explained the situation to the dispatcher. The man tried to take the phone from me, but I managed to keep hold of it, shouting for help. The moment stretched into what felt like hours. The woman and her son were crying, huddled together in the corner, while I tried to keep the man at bay. Finally, the sound of sirens filled the air, a promise of rescue. The police arrived in a flurry of motion, their presence immediately asserting control. The man hesitated, then raised his hands in surrender. The officers moved swiftly, handcuffing him and leading him away. The tension began to ebb, replaced by relief and exhaustion. One officer stayed behind to take statements and offer reassurance. The woman's story was harrowing. She had endured so much to protect her son and find safety. The officer assured her that she was safe now, that they would help her find a refuge. As the police took the man away, the woman thanked me over and over, her eyes filled with gratitude. I assured her that it was nothing, that I was just glad they were safe. The officer and a social worker arranged for them to stay at a safe house for the night, providing the first step towards a new beginning. The store returned to its usual quiet, but the night felt different. I had faced something terrifying and come out the other side, having made a difference in someone's life. The graveyard shift had never felt so significant. As dawn approached and the light began to filter through the windows, I couldn't stop thinking about the woman and her son. I hoped they would find peace and safety in their new life. The memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the strength it takes to stand up to fear and the power of kindness in the face of darkness. I realized that night had changed me. It showed me the importance of courage, empathy, and the impact one can have, even in the most unexpected situations. It was a night I would never forget, a testament to the enduring spirit of those who fight for safety and freedom. Over the next few days, I couldn't help but share the story with a few trusted friends and coworkers. To my surprise, the story spread, and the community rallied around the woman and her son. Donations of clothing, toys, and other essentials poured in from neighbors and local businesses, eager to help them start their new life on a positive note. The gas station became a sort of hub for people wanting to contribute. It was heartwarming to see so many people come together to support strangers in need. The community's kindness and generosity were a stark contrast to the terror of that night, showing that even in darkness, there is light. One afternoon, a social worker who had been helping the woman and her son stopped by the gas station to give me an update. She shared that they were doing well and adjusting to their new surroundings. The boy had started school, and the woman had begun working with a counselor to overcome her trauma. The social worker also handed me a handwritten letter from the woman. In it, she expressed her deep gratitude for my help that night and shared how my actions had given her the strength to keep moving forward. Her words touched me deeply, and I was reminded of the profound impact one act of kindness can have on someone's life. The experience made me more vigilant during my shifts. I kept a watchful eye on the door, ready to help anyone who might need it. The nights felt different now, charged with a sense of purpose and responsibility. I knew I had the power to make a difference, and I was determined to use it. I also took the time to learn more about resources and support systems available for people in crisis. Armed with this knowledge, I felt better prepared to assist anyone who might find themselves in a situation similar to that of the woman and her son. Months passed, but the memory of that night remained fresh in my mind. The woman's courage and the boy's resilience continued to inspire me. Their story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. The community's response further reinforced my belief in the power of collective action. Together, We had made a tangible difference in the lives of two people, showing that when we come together, we can overcome any challenge. Reflecting on the events of that night, I realized the true power of kindness. It's not about grand gestures or heroic feats, but about the simple, everyday actions that make a difference. A helping hand, a listening ear, a safe place. These small acts of kindness can have a profound impact on someone's life. As I continued working the graveyard shift, I carried this lesson with me. Every interaction, no matter how small, was an opportunity to show kindness and make a positive difference. And in doing so, I found a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment.